So we'll move on to our next session, which is by Mr. Vishal Ruya. Mr. Vishal has led risk-based internal audits at one of the largest petrochemical complexes of the world. He has led several enterprise risk management engagements, internal audits, internal controls audits, SOX audits, risk managements, compliance managements for leading companies in manufacturing, infrastructure, and oil and gas industry. Mr. Vishal has extensive experience in large project management. He has led handpicked teams from sizes 5 to 25 on various engagements and collaborated with subject matter experts to constantly provide a complete value addition solution to his clients. Over to you, Mr. Vishal.
Thank you very much, and pleasure to be here. And firstly, good morning to all the colleagues on the call. Real pleasure to be here talking to you all. And pardon me for the background. This is my son's room, so I'm sort of hijacked his room today for this session. So I think the primary objective that I've been told that we need to discuss in the next half an hour or so is on the aspect of data analytics. If Tushar is on the call, Tushar, can you please project the slides? Yeah, so I think by the time the slides come up, let me just give you a little bit of background. I've been an internal audit professional now for almost 21 years. And the one thing that I've heard throughout my career constantly is the use of data analytics by internal auditors. That's one thing that's never gone away. It's always stayed with us. But if you really ask me personally of my sense of how effectively have we done this, I think we've spoken about it a lot in different shapes and sizes. Each one of us have done something on data analytics, I'm sure. But this is also an area which still remains a focus for us, and a lot more that we all as professionals can do. So what we will try and cover today in the session is to see that how data analytics can be utilized across the IA lifecycle. And also for people who are maybe a little early in the journey of data analytics, what we thought we can do is that just demystify the entire analytics mechanism or framework into the critical stages. And there are 5 critical stages in any analytics project. So we'll just quickly walk you through that to give you a sense of what does it entail to put in place when we talk about data analytics as a model. Just wanted to get a sense before I start the session of the maturity of your organization in terms of using data analytics in your IA function, so that I can then accordingly moderate the session as I go along. So there is a small survey that we can run to capture the insights from people on the call on what's the maturity of the data analytics platform. Tushar, if you can just elaborate on how we can run the survey. Tushar? I guess there's some technical problem. I think let's move on in the interest of time. Let's maybe technology is not serving us well today. Let's move on. Let's move on, Tushar. Yeah. So what to start off with, I think let's talk about the challenges that we face or the ask that we have from our stakeholders today. So as professionals, I'm sure that in each of our organizations where we are working today, we have seen the businesses adopting digital in a big way. Each of the business strategy, each of the business stakeholders, functions, locations are looking at infusing technology as part of their strategy of their business plans. And which is where there's a lot of pressure on now the internal audit teams as well to be more and more digital and infuse digital as part of their the way of working in the organization. Of course the challenges that we face, especially in today's era, is on the cost as well, because in the last 18 months or so, since we have been facing the pandemic, there have been challenges in terms of the top line growth and the bottom line impact. So cost is of course is under pressure. The pressure on our agility, our ability to go and give back insights to the management on a timely basis is another serious ask from our stakeholders, especially the audit committee members. And the fact that we are dealing with complex processes today, which itself are based upon a digital platform infused with a lot of technology. So how can we provide assurance to the stakeholders in this digital enabled environment by using digital tools as part of the internal audit function is, of course, a focus for every IA organization and IA stakeholder today. And that's where the ask of the IA function becoming a little more dynamic, more agile, and more real time comes in, and which leads us to the solution where data analytics and robotics play a very important role in this entire journey. Sure, if we can move on. So I think there are two broad objectives we thought. Being a process professional, I think objectivization is a core to our DNA. So we thought that let's put down two objectives for an IA function of the future in terms of how do we do better what we have been doing up till now. So how do we bring in efficiency and effectiveness in what we are doing already, and how do we increase our relevance in the organization by touching upon areas which are more strategic in nature, which are more relevant for our business stakeholders. So effectiveness and relevance are the two broad dimensions we thought we will consider as we go through the rest of the slides and see the use of analytics and technology across the IA life cycle. So to start off with, I think Tushar, if you can move on. Yeah. If I look at now the entire audit life cycle, and I'm sure we all are familiar with this particular process. Stage one, and this is a stage where probably most of the people do not infuse the aspect of analytics very much, is on the entire aspect of defining the internal audit strategy and the mandate for internal audit. Where in few organizations, we have seen that when they are preparing the broad IA strategy, which may be a 3-year or 5-year roadmap for their IA function, they have considered the impact of technology on the IA function. It can be in the form of incorporating digital FTEs as part of your entire manpower planning. It can be an aspect where you're looking at a higher assurance coverage through use of data analytics, where more and more you're going to a population-based testing rather than a sample-based testing. Also, the aspect of doing a point-in-time testing vis-a-vis a continuous control monitoring or continuous control, testing, to make sure that it's not only a point-in-time assurance that you're giving back to your stakeholders, but on certain key areas, you're also utilizing the CCM or continuous control monitoring models which are available today for providing continuous assurances. So those are the few aspects that you consider as part of the strategy document. And this is extremely important given the fact that for us to be enabled to do any of these aspects, cost and budget, of course, will be a factor. And while we may say that technology is very cheap today, it still comes at a cost. So it's important that we create a business case for ourselves and incorporate that as part of the strategy document as we embark on the digital journey for internal audit. The second stage where I personally feel that we can use analytics very effectively, and this is one area that I would want to, of course, personally also want to invest more and more in terms of deploying this particular aspect, is the stage of audit planning. Now, our erstwhile traditional approach for audit planning has been to assess the risk for each of the processes, for each of the controls that we have. And then depending upon the coverage that we decide for ourselves for a particular year, we define the audit plan for the year. Now, this is an area that we have seen people getting immense benefit and value by using data analytics. And when I say using data analytics, it need not necessarily be on the data within the organization. So if I take two broad dimensions, one which is internal data set and one which is external data set, a combination of both really helps in coming out with a very robust and a very relevant audit plan. To give you some examples from an internal perspective, can we look at how the processes have moved, doing a simple review of our trial balances to say that which are the captions which have got impacted the most in the last year, looking at business plans and looking at the areas of focus from a business standpoint, taking a combination of all these three factors and then trying to come up with a risk-based model to say that which are the areas which will be a focus of management in the year. And that's why we prioritize those areas from our audit planning perspective. From an external perspective, and this is especially useful where if you are a multi geographically spread organization based out of multiple locations, and you're coming up with an audit plan to say that what is it that you should be covering in each of the geographies, which is where the external data points come in very handy. It can be certain risk indicators from a cyber perspective, from a social media perspective, from a country economic GDP perspective. Now, these are broad parameters, but they do give you a little bit of insight, especially when you're looking at planning the audit of your global locations. So audit planning is one area where I feel that it can add a lot of value when we start deploying tools like data analytics today from an internal data perspective and external data perspective. Moving on, the third area is basically when this is our bread and butter. As internal auditors, we are all very used to this, is the execution part of it. Now, when I come to execution, I think our first thought process goes to the what can go wrong scenarios, or what are the hypotheses that we want to test as part of our audit, and using analysis or analytics over there. But I think if I take a step back, the first stage, of course, in execution can also be the specific audit planning that we do, or the audit work program or risk and control matrices that we prepare for conducting our audit. And that is a stage where we can use data analytics very effectively, so that even before we hit the field, we have analyzed the process, the key parameters in a process. So, for example, if I'm conducting a procurement audit, can I look at the major material spends, the movements which have happened in the prices, the changes which have happened in the vendor program? What are the kind of issues that have been faced from a production non-availability of materials standpoint, and then determining that, given that these are the challenges, these are the areas which appear to be what is a suboptimal from a process perspective, can we focus our audit towards those areas, and then make our audit program relevant to those areas? So that's where analytics again plays a very important role in making our audit programs very, very focused, so that the time in execution is not on finding issues or finding observations or finding anomalies, but it's more on doing root cause analysis, so that at the end of the day, we can go back to the management with a solution of the challenges and the problems that they are facing, and which is where we as IA professional enhance the value that we put on the table. The second, of course, is on the execution side, which is what I think most of us would be doing in some shape or form. It may be in Excel, it may be in some fancy analytical platform, but that's something that we've always been doing. And over there, the only point I would mention increasingly, which is getting a focus, is to move towards more continuous what is say monitoring, rather than a point in time assurance, because that really doesn't give a lot of assurance back to our stakeholders, especially on critical areas. It can be areas which are related to your system configurations, which are very, very critical, because they impact all the transactions which happen in your ERP. Or it can be certain anti-fraud areas, which should be a continuous focus, especially in today's times, and so that we can monitor them on a continuous basis and keep going back and giving assurances back to our stakeholders. There has been a lot of talk also in various forums on predictive analytics, which is a little what do you say difficult for me to understand, because I don't think I have personally seen anybody using predictive analytics very effectively. And the only way or only practical application that I have seen from a predictive analytics perspective is how do we look at patterns or certain trends from the past data that we have with us to preempt the areas which are likely to end up into problems. From a use case perspective, there are very few use cases where this can come in handy for us as internal audit professionals. But I think to say that we work only in hindsight is also not fair. So how do we make our audits more and more real time by looking at more contemporary data is the solution to the problem that we're looking at from a predictive analytics perspective. And the last area, which I think is the most sort of ignored from an analytics standpoint or digital standpoint, is our audit communication. I have been to audit committees where we have actually done video reporting, where we have played a video to explain the management on certain critical areas of how the existing process is, and then show them the future state by implementing the recommendations that have come from the audit side. There are certain digital boardroom solutions also which are available in SAP and other platforms as well. So the point being that how do we now start using analytics? It can be a storytelling through a dashboard, where we start explaining our problem statement by drilling down the dashboard in front of the audit committee members. We can't do this for all the areas, but especially for areas which are critical and which demand this kind of an attention. It can be a great way of creating impact to in front of our stakeholders through use of digital reporting mechanisms. So that's the last area that I will touch upon, where analytics and robotics both can be used very, very effectively. So that's the summary of the use of analytics across the life cycle. Now, if I become a little more tactical and especially touching upon the audit plan that I mentioned earlier. So I think when we start looking at our risk management and start planning our audits, what increasingly we see companies doing is to categorize the nature of audits that they will be conducting in the year and building the audit plan according to that. So depending upon what your risk assessment tells you is the focus area for the current year or for the next 2 to 3 years, I divide my audit plan into 4 broad buckets, as you can see over here. The first one can be data analytics based, which is where I say that there are certain areas which are very critical and important for me as an organization. And I would use analytics for doing continuous monitoring of these areas so that I'm not doing a point in time analysis or a particular period coverage, but this is a continuous assurance that I provide you. So that's the first bucket where you probably use CCM models for greater assurance. The second, of course, is risk-based projects where, depending upon the initiatives that the business has planned and the risks which they are facing, how can we prioritize these areas and bring in subject matter experts? So apart from using data analytics, I also use the industry knowledge or the functional knowledge for executing my audits. Third is my routine audits that I need to do as part of my coverage to ensure a holistic coverage as that I need to provide to my stakeholders. Within those standard routine audits, if I may call it that, how do I optimize the time that I'm spending so that I can then release time for the risk-based or thematic audits that I want to do by use of data analytics? So that's the third bucket where I look at my routine audits and optimize the time that I spent over there by use of analytics. And third is, of course, if I am a geographically spread organization, how can I do offline audit without visiting the site, minimizing my travel and expenses by using digital platforms and by extensively using analytics? So maybe those are the four buckets that you can look at when you're planning your audits. We call it a farm model, which is a flexible audit response model. Depending upon the nature of risk and the nature of audits that you're executing, you categorize your audits accordingly. And idea would be to move to a future state where audits are more enabled through analytics. This is where the digital FTE comes in as part of your strategy, and the dependence on manual visits or manual people executing these audits is reduced to a larger extent, because that time is then effectively spent in root causing and engaging with the management rather than spending time on execution in the field. So that's how we look at internal audit evolving in the future through use of analytics and robotics platform. So that was a little bit of brief. I'm just conscious of the time, so sorry if I'm rushing a little bit. But I thought I'll also cover the data analytics architecture and demystify some of the components. For people on the call who are already advanced in their analytical journey may find this a little, repetitive, but please bear with me. So there are 5 critical stages that I will talk about. The first one in any data analytics is, of course, looking at the broad architecture. Yeah. So Tushar, if you can move on. Yeah. So this is a broad architecture. This is just a sample one that I'm putting up over here. There can be multiple ways of coming up with an architecture. Idea being, just wanted to discuss with you what are the key aspects of key technology components that you should be looking at when you are setting up an analytics platform. The first one, of course, is on the ETL side, which is your extraction tools, depending upon the type of ERP that you're using. And although the slide shows only ERP, I would say that the real power of analytics comes in when you're looking at not only your primary ERP, but all the other legacy application or ancillary applications that you're using, and using extraction tools for automated data extraction. Doing it manually, we've all tried our hands with various tools which were there in the market, and it becomes really, really difficult for sustaining those kind of models. So we strongly recommend having a automated extraction tool for extracting data from your ERP. You then need a staging server where you need to store the data. Now over here, you can either utilize your existing BI warehouse if the organization already has, or a data mart if you have created a data mart. But ideally, many of the organizations prefer creating a separate data warehouse for the audit needs, because the level of granularity that an internal auditor will go from a data perspective will be much higher than most of the BI tools, which will have summary level data and not maybe transactional data. So that second part is looking at the staging layer and also the data warehouse that you look at. And nowadays, you have various open source data warehouses which are available. It can be a Mongo or various other applications which are there, which allows you to store structured as well as unstructured data. The third is, of course, the application server. This is basically where you write your processing logic or your codes, if I may call it that, which is applied on the data for you to get the output. And there are various evolving languages. It can be R, it can be Python, it can be SQL. Depending upon the complexity and the nature of analytics that you're running, you need to decide upon what is the application server that you're going to use. And the last is basically the user interface. This is for twofold. One, for your internal audit team to get an access to the analytical platform and for them to run on-demand queries. And the second is, of course, for the visualization of the output of analytics, which can be through any of the visualization platforms like Power BI, Tableau, or a ClickSense. So those are the key components, I would say, of an analytical architecture. And there are multiple options and variants available today because of the advent of technology. But the key aspects of the architecture remains the same. Moving forward, I think on the stages of an analytics, the first part is, of course, looking at the entire extraction problem. And if you look at on the left-hand side, the circles are the key questions that you need to ask when you're looking at extraction of data for running your analytics. The first one is, of course, what? What exactly are you running? So what data you need to extract will depend upon the scenario that you have written. And we would recommend that when we are writing a scenario, most of the times we leave out the aspects of system configuration, system access, and these two aspects are very critical in any scenario that we write, whether there is segregation of duty and whether there is sensitive access management, and also whether the configurations which are there behind are relevant for my scenario or not. Take an example of duplicate payment analysis. Now, most of the ERP platforms will have a configuration setting at the backend, which says that you can enable a duplicate payment check. That means if the same vendor and the same invoice number gets repeated, the ERP itself will block it. Now, this is an important control to have. So when I'm writing my query for duplicate payment analysis, I should also factor in the configuration which is there at the, or should be there at the backend as part of my coding. The second question is, from where am I extracting the data? And this is extremely important because within the ERP also, you will have your standard transaction codes. You'll also have custom transaction codes, and there are certain customization that would have been done. So what is the data source that you adopt for extracting the data? Which exact table, which exact data points should be something that is validated with the process owner. And this is something that we have also learned through our experience, where if you do not validate it at the beginning, you end up getting a lot of false positives later on. So from where to extract data is another important piece of the puzzle. Third is how much, which means that for what period are you going to extract the data? Is this going to be the last 3 months, last 6 months, last 1 year? And this is important not only from a coverage standpoint, but also from your database sizing standpoint. Because if you start extracting a lot of data, and especially data sets which are large, for example, change logs in your ERP, if you start extracting them, these are really, really bulky files and very difficult to extract. So determining that what is the period for which you are extracting data is extremely important. The second last is how often, which means that are you going to extract and do a data refresh every day, every week, every month? Most of the times, monthly is a frequency which is recommended, because we really do not do a real-time audit per se in that sense. That's why for certain scenarios, you go on a monthly basis. But if there are certain important scenarios or aspects that you want to cover on a daily basis, we need to be very clear in terms of what is the exact data that we are extracting to make sure that we do not blow up the database size. And the last one is that who does the extraction, and which is where we strongly recommend using automated extraction tools rather than keeping it manual, because then the sustainability becomes a big question mark. So that's the first piece of the puzzle as far as analytics is concerned, and most difficult one, if I would say, which is extraction. The second one is, of course, looking at the warehousing. Tushar, if you can move forward. Yeah. When it comes to warehousing, and you can see the box in the middle, I'll just try to give an example of a duplicate payment, and probably you can just keep reading as I talk about it. So second piece of the puzzle is warehousing, where the first thing that we need to consider is scalability, and which is where an open source database is much more recommended, because it can handle structured data as well as unstructured data. To give you an example, for certain clients, we've also looked at capturing certain video feeds, running analytics on that, or it can be scanning certain manual documents by using intelligent character recognition tools and then running analytics on that. So there can be multiple ways, or it can also be certain external data points that you're extracting from the World Wide Web, and then combining that with your internal data points and running analytics. So scalability of the data warehouse is extremely important, and which is where the choice of data warehouse that you deploy becomes a very critical factor. The second one is, of course, looking at the ownership of the data warehouse, because somebody will have to create those data models, will have to maintain those data models. And the moment there is a change in the ERP or any new table added, any new field added, the data model and the data warehouse have to be updated. So what kind of ownership structure and the update structure we put in place becomes extremely important, because otherwise the rest of the analytical platform will just fall flat. And the last one, which is extremely important in today's time, is the security. From a data security, data privacy perspective, who all will have access, where do you actually host the data warehouse, whether it's internally on-prem, on cloud, or a third-party cloud. We need to make sure that we align with our IT policies to make sure that the security of the data is not compromised. Because as I said earlier, the volume of data that we will be extracting will be really, really large. The third part is the processing of the data, and processing is where you actually write your code or your script in whatever language that you have chosen. And the important part to take care of at this stage is first looking at false positives, which means that a lot of time will have to be spent on validating the output that you get to remove the false positives. Otherwise, the audit team will get burdened with a number of exceptions, which actually are not exceptions in true sense. The second is the processing platform, which means the language or the server that you're using for running the query. And this is important because the choice of language will determine the speed at which the analytics is run and the accuracy that you get. So for complex, algorithms or complex scenarios, you may want to use queries like or language like R or Python. But for simple scenarios, you can probably use SQL because it's easy to understand and easy to maintain as well. While you're coding also, the flexibility is important, whether you are hard coding your code or you're keeping flexibility. I'll give you a simple example. Say if I'm doing a very simple analysis of my open GRNs or open PO, am I taking a day's threshold to say that show me open line items only after 30 days, 60 days or 90 days? And now these thresholds can keep on changing depending upon the policies that the management adopt. So it's always recommended to not hard code this, but to keep a variable field open with for manual input so that you can give a feed to the analytical platform and then the analysis can run. So keeping flexibility is very important. Speed, as I mentioned, will depend upon the choice of language that you write and also the way that you write your code. And if I get a little technical, if you are querying a database again and again, going back to the database, getting data points and running analysis, and if this happens maybe 3 or 4 times in the code will tend to get slower. The output will take a lot of time to generate. So how do we optimize the database querying? How do we keep pre-computed fields in the database so that the speed of running the analytics is not impacted? So that's an important factor to be taken care of. There are clients which are moving to a self-service analytics kind of a mode where you have a platform where you may write a simple query. It can be chatbot enabled or it can be query enabled, where you can write that show me the sales for the last 3 months to customers which have defaulted in payments for more than 3 times. It can be a simple query. You put that in the chatbot and you get the output. So there are models available today where you can also utilize chatbot models and AI models for self-service analytics and on-demand analytics. So that's the fourth part, which is processing. The reporting part is where visualization platforms comes into play, and the most important part is not to make our dashboards fancy but more relevant, and which is where it should have a storytelling. So before you start creating your visualization, it's important that the story that you want to tell is very clear in your mind. So if you want to talk about, say, a simple problem of procurement analysis that you would have done from cost perspective, maybe you want to start with the large material or service procurement spends, drill it down to specific items or categories, drill it down to the process of buying those categories, and then touching upon the anomalies that you have noted in that particular area. So how you build the flow is how your dashboard will get generated, which is based upon the storytelling and the root cause analysis that you have done. Needless to say that the dashboard needs to be dynamic in case when you're discussing with the stakeholders or presenting it, if somebody wants to look at a specific cut, it should enable the dynamic filtering of criteria which are there on the dashboard. And more importantly, it should be customized for every user. So the same dashboard may not be relevant from an end user. When you're going through maybe senior management, maybe the dashboard needs to be optimized. If you're going to the audit committee, maybe the dashboard needs to be further optimized. So depending upon the stakeholder where you're using this, the dashboarding has to be updated. And that's why for most of the critical scenarios, you'll have multiple templates of dashboards or visualizations that you want to do, depending upon the stakeholder that you're addressing. So those are the important factors in a visualization, stage. And the last stage is the feedback loop. And this is extremely important. Feedback is where once I have analyzed the data, I have used my analytical platform, I have looked at the exceptions and done the root causing. How am I feeding back my analysis and my learnings back to the algorithm and back to the code, so that if there are certain false positives that would have generated, how do I make sure that those are not repeated in future? At the same time, I leverage my learning to make my algorithm even more richer and more finer. So that's the feedback loop that is very important. to maintain, and then integrate that with my algorithm or the code that I would have written. So those are the critical stages of any data analytics platform. To summarize, I think there are three broad components that we need to look at when we look at analytics. One is the operating model, which goes back to your strategy of how you want to integrate analytics as part of your overall strategy. The technology stack that you want to use to make sure that this is fit for future and is aligned with the evolution of technology models in the marketplace. And thirdly, the impact that it will have on your talent. So how do you look at your manpower very differently? How do you start looking at digital FTEs? How do you look at skill sets which are there in your team from a data analytics perspective? So whether you would look at hiring database specialist or visualization specialist or coding specialist depends, will shape up the way the talent of the internal audit team is evolved. So those three, I would say, are the core aspects that one needs to consider when they're going for an analytics platform. I'll just pause here, and maybe there are 5 minutes left. I know I've overrun a little bit, but I'll open the session for any question and answers which anyone may have.
Thank you, Mr. Vishal. There are, in fact, a few questions, but for the sake of timing here, I'll probably just read out two, and then I'll probably forward the remaining few so that we can get a response on them. So what, in your experience, amongst the clients that you've seen, how many of them have completely moved on to a 100% CCM model, and how many of them are at least more than 50% there?
So I think most of them, Aarti, it's a great question, are have started moving on to the journey of CCM. I have seen the various large organizations now also set up control shared services, or what they call as control towers, where for few of the critical areas, I would say that they have 100% moved to a CCM kind of a model. Say, if I look at my key processes like my procurement, my order to cash, my record to report, maybe 7, 8 key process cycles that we look at, and maybe there are 10 controls which are very, very critical in each of the processes. Those have been moved to a CCM. Now, moving forward, I think the plan is to see that how can we integrate our IFC testing or SOX testing? How can we automate that? And how can we increase the coverage of controls that we have in our CCM sort of a structure?
All right. Okay. So could you elaborate a little bit on what it is? You mentioned digital FTs in our plan. When we are doing the budgeting, you should also give to digital FT. So can you just elaborate a little bit on that?
So I think traditionally the way each one of us would be doing our audit planning or manpower planning would be to say that, say if I'm hypothetically executing 12 audits in a year or 13 audits in a year, and per audit maybe I'm taking 60 man days or 70 man days. So I'll do the sizing of my team depending upon the effort that I'm spending on a particular audit. Now, say I invest in an analytical platform, and by investing in that, I'm trying to reduce my fieldwork time by say 15% or 20%. So that 20% goes out of my manpower, comes as an additional line item in my strategy as a digital FTE. And this will have the cost of technology that I'll have to bear as an internal audit function. So which is where the concept of digital FTEs come into play, because I have substituted my manual labor with an analytical platform.
Right. Okay. So we have, I think, some more time. I'll just add in one more question here. Give me a minute. How do we ensure that knowledge transfer happens when a CCM model is in place? So like you said, there are some updates or something that needs to be done. Then how do we ensure that that knowledge has been transferred and updated in relevant places? Because like, the team sometimes may keep changing. So it's not going to be relevant if I, keep a constant team. So how do you ensure that?
So I think that's the way the journey of analytics is what you say conceptualized in an organization. What we see few of the organization doing is defining champions for each of the areas. For example, if I have 11 key processes in my organization, I define a data analytics champion for each of the process. Now the role of the champion is to make sure that they retain the knowledge, they pass it on to the balance team members, so that at any point of time, if there is a churn happening, the knowledge is not lost along with the churn, and somebody is making sure that it's retained within the organization and capitalized as we go along. So defining champions of data analytics at each of these stages. And more importantly, one should probably look at doing this at right from the beginning. To give you an example, for one of the large steel company that we did the project with on deployment of analytics for the IA function, we started from day one and we created process cycle wise key champions from their own internal audit team, which partnered with us throughout the entire analytics journey. That means they knew exactly what we were doing, so that when we left the analytic platform with them, they had somebody internally to take care of the platform and also train the users internally as the new members keep on coming in. So that's one of the ways of making sure that the knowledge is retained and capitalized.
All right. Okay. So I'll forward the remaining questions to you. In interest of time, I'll have to cut you short. I'm so sorry. Thank you once again for explaining, the architecture of how, if someone wanted today to even start data analytics as a process, or, move or shift focus, how should they even plan the architecture? That was really nice and interesting that you touched upon it, and, you gave us an insight into it. Also, the focus that you should continuously build CCM models and also bring the entire testing to, rather than being at a point of time, to being a CCM model. Thank you so much, Vishal, for being here today with us, and thank you for everything.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thanks everybody for joining in. Thank you.